This book is so big, I don't know where to put it. Ooh. Oh my gosh, I'm dropping books all over the place. What? Hey there, book people. So the last video that I filmed was my 2014 book resolutions. And in that video, I mentioned that there's a couple new types of genres that I want to read in 2014. So after filming that and seeing kind of the breakdown of things that I wanted to add to my reading repertoire, I started thinking about what I typically read, and that is art books, which might sound super boring, but I assure you, art books are awesome. And there's a lot of types. They come in all different formats for all different purposes. I realize that this might be kind of like a different sort of contribution to the booktube community, but that's definitely something that I can talk about endlessly as my art books. So I'm going to possibly do a little series to that end, and I'm going to call it The Anatomy of an Art Book. There's all sorts of types of art books, and they're really cool, I promise. I'm in no way an expert on art history and art books, that sort of thing, and my list will not be comprehensive, but I've got a lot on my shelf. I'm excited to talk about them. All that to say, I'm going to consider this video the first of my The Anatomy of an Art Book series. I have like a pile of books that I hauled in New York City last February, and of course I hadn't filmed it because I wasn't doing this in February. Let me tell you, I got so many books. I got 11 books on this trip. I have 8 of them here with me at home, and in 3 days I'll be going back up to school where I have the last 3. And so I will, at the end, pop on the end bit of this video with those books because I don't want to leave them out. They're my favorites. The first book I'm going to show you is the MoMA Contemporary Highlights. It is their collection handbook for works of art they have in their museum after 1980. Since I do like a fair amount of art traveling, I've started kind of collecting these because they're really good mementos to keep from an art museum. Similarly, I got a collection handbook from the Frick collection. This is much smaller than the Frick's collection, is considerably smaller than the MoMA's, but it's no less beautiful. And seriously, you guys, everyone needs to go to this museum. So many of the works were new to me in that I don't really study, like, I don't know, earlier types of art. I mean, I have, but it's not my concentration. So I wanted to read about this. Also, this is a painting by Angres, which is called The Duchess, I think. I'll leave the description in the down bar because this girl was the Blair Waldorf of New York City in the 1800s. So pretty saucy. Love this painting. New favorite as a result of that trip. 2 books along these lines at 2 other museums, but instead of focusing on the art within the museum, it focuses on the building and the history of the museum. So that's kind of cool. This one is from the Met Cloisters. This is a medieval art and architecture museum. It is on the Upper West Side. Take the A train until you can't go north anymore, and you're pretty much there. This museum was created by a buddy of the Rockefellers who collected like architectural elements from monasteries. And Rockefeller was like, I've got enough money to stick them together. Why don't we do that? So it's beautiful. Medieval art's pretty mystical and eerie, and I like it a lot. So this is kind of a history of the cloisters as well as highlights from the collection. Back to the Frick. I have a history of the Frick collection because I knew nothing about this collector. So this is also a history of the museum and history of the collector. Will be pretty fun. 2 kind of random art books I picked up at the Guggenheim. When I was at the Guggenheim, I saw some really fantastic shows, and I went hunting for the exhibition catalogs in the bookstore afterwards, and instead, I did find them, but first I found their bargain book section, and the Guggenheim has a really good bargain book section. Go into the bookshop, it's all the way on the left, you guys, on the bottom, so art history / art book collector's secret. Find it. There is a super fatty book on Hilary Bay that was $5. This is a biography. It's fairly large. It's called Hilary Bay in Search of the Spirit in Art by Joan M. Luca. I'm really excited about this book. Hilary Bay was a pretty sassy lady. She is largely responsible for bringing European modernism to America, and so not a lot of people know about her for some reason. I'll admit I don't know a lot about her, which is why I picked this up. And She worked very closely with Solomon Guggenheim as he was starting his collection. Hillary Bay is well known to the New York Art Museum world, yet she is barely known at all. Mysterious. I love non-objective art and conceptual art, and Hillary Bay and friends are all dealing with that kind of at its origins in the 1930s, when it was even more provocative than it is now because there was so much less of it. So people are like, "Ooh, idea art, gross." So that was $5 at the Guggenheim. What a steal. This was also a cheap book from the Guggenheim. This is called The Great Upheaval, Modern Art from the Guggenheim Collection from 1910 1918. And this is just kind of a general, like a super general art history book. I'll kind of hold it up while I flip through it. It is somewhere between like an art history survey book and a collection handbook, because it is all works from the Guggenheim's collection, but much more continuous history is given. Typically in a handbook like the other ones I showed, it's just kind of piece by piece, but this tells a really good story of the Guggenheim's history of collecting. Kind of jumping gears a little bit, now I have 2 more books for the last leg of my New York City book haul that I got at museums for special reasons. Museums have incredible bookshops. They have everything from histories to novels, like fiction. Of course, obviously it's all kind of artsy and art related, but this was another new museum for me that I never even heard of before I went up there, and it's totally devoted to Austrian and German modernism. When I went to this museum, I had no idea that I was going to encounter a certain Klimt painting. Their very, very famous portrait, a lady named Adele Bloch-Bauer, that has gained international notoriety because it was stolen by the Nazis in World War II and has a very long history of legal struggles and repatriation issues. And long story short, it's in the Neue Gallery. I had no idea. And I stumbled upon it, was totally blown away, cried a little bit, and seriously sat in front of Adele Bloch-Bauer for like 45 minutes. And there's one very tiny bench, and a lot of people wanted to sit with her, and I was like, no, I came so far, and this is like the greatest moment of my life. To that end, the Neue Gallery has just this thin but really nice book on their portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer. It is a history of the portrait, a history of her, and it's got some really beautiful slides. So you can't take pictures in the Neue Gallery, and you really can't take pictures of this, and of course this is the one that I wanted to have a lasting impression of, so I got the book. Good thing to do when you're starting to collect art books. Use books as a way of getting around no photography rules because they're full of beautiful photographs. One of the last books I got when I was up there is from my favorite art show that I saw. Actually, I can't make that claim. There were 2 art shows out of the many that I saw that I have a tie for first place. This one was Blues for Smoke. This was a show that originated in California. Oh shoot, Museum of Contemporary Art, Los Angeles. I should have remembered that. I came to the Whitney in February, and the Whitney Museum of American Art is one of my all-time favorite art museums that I've ever been to. Basically, when there's like a traveling show in an art museum, they make a book about it, and they're awesome. It has a lot of essays. I love reading art critical essays. That's why I'm double majoring in art history and English criticism. That's my goal someday, is to do this. There's both, like I said, beautiful pictures of things that were in the show, a whole bunch of critical writings, histories, the wall text, the whole 9 yards. This is a way to take that exhibition home with me and stick it on my bookshelf for posterity. Also kind of a splurge. I didn't actually get this at the Whitney's bookstore because I felt too guilty about how expensive it was, and then I was having major like buyer's regret for not taking it home with me, and a couple days later I found it for a little bit cheaper at the MoMA's bookstore. So thanks, MoMA, for sharing the museum love. Those are the 8 of the 11 I have here. Back at school, I am going to snap forward to school when I wrap up this video. So I won't lie, I almost forgot to finish this. To kick off the last 3, we have another exhibition handbook. It's from the Guggenheim, and it's like pretty fatty for a collection handbook. Someday when I get around to like doing kind of a run through of like best / least favorite collection handbooks, I'll talk more about this because of its size and scope. But again, I had never been to the Guggenheim, so obviously I had to take some of it home with me. Also at the Guggenheim, the exhibition catalog that I was searching for was this fantastic beauty. It's for the show Paper Like Skin by Zarina, which had traveled the country a little bit and went to Chicago after it was in New York. This exhibit was the best exhibit I think I've ever seen, and I was incredibly skeptical going in, and I was like, oh, please, paper manipulations, what is that? And then I was just so humbled by it. Most of it is images, which I appreciate, since a lot of the times the exhibition handbooks are essays, mostly essays. There are essays in here, but it's probably the best recreation of an exhibit in book form that I have ever seen. I keep this on my top shelf at all times because it's like a really transcendent piece of book art. Lastly, I have a book that's not exactly an art book, but it's pretty cute. It's this book of New York City poems. At the time, there was a big push to be putting poetry on the subways, so I enjoyed that a lot, and of course, I had to get this. I think I actually took this from the Frick's bookshop, because they just have like a lot of odds and ends. So yeah, poems about New York City. And that wraps up the New York City book haul. I tried to go through the last few pretty quick. Especially this is getting quite long. So, well, at some point I will get more into them, but I kind of wanted to document, for documentation's sake, that I got a whole family of art books in one haul in New York City. And this is why you need to bring an empty suitcase when you travel, so you can fill it with books and get them all home. So that's it for the first installation of the Anatomy of an Art Book series. I'll actually go through the anatomy of these types of books at a later date. And other than that, keep to your reading, book friends. See you on the flippity flip.